All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Millennials Are Old podcast. And you know what, Brian? Of course, because we're old millennials, I've been thinking about dead, unfunny memes recently. And I've been thinking primarily about the Habbo Hotel pools closed meme. Have you been thinking about that one, Brian, or are you even familiar with it?
Yeah, I definitely know what that is.
Good, excellent. Yeah. So there was this old game called Habbo Hotel. It was one of those like kid-friendly games, online kid spaces, things that just don't exist anymore. So kids have to interact with adults all the time. It's definitely not a
Well,
breeding ground for pedophiles or anything
well,
like that.
everywhere that should be a kid space is an online millennial space because they're
Exactly.
all they're all out of spoons and they need to decompress by playing Roblox.
But yeah, so basically there was this meme where a bunch of people just got together and just blocked off the pool at Habbo Hotel. And there was a meme with a black guy in an afro that just had said pools closed. And it was a different time on the internet, right? But it made me think, right? When it happened originally, because I was on Habbo Hotel and it made me so fucking mad. And I'm like, nowadays, I want pools to always be open. And there's actually a movie out there that was released in the 60s about a man who swims in all the open pools he can find. Could you imagine that plot being in a movie, Brian?
I mean, when you say the plot like that, that sounds pretty bad. It sounds pretty stupid.
It
What is it
does.
called? The pooler?
It's something similar to that, and I agree. It's a giant pile of shit. And it's actually a movie I just watched just to try to get the just horrible memory of pools closed out of my head. So this week we're gonna review the movie The Swimmer because I have no idea what else we could fucking talk about this fucking week.
Well, thankfully, it's literally 115 degrees here in Portland this week. So it's as good a time as any to imagine swimming.
So without further ado, let's get into our review this week, which is the 1960s classic, The Swimmer. But before we get into our review this week, Brian, let's bring back our segment, Cringe Generational Cringe Millennial Moment of the Week.
Week. And Taylor, I gotta tell you, as a millennial would say, I am peed. I am out of spoons, and it has been a cromulent fuck crustable of a day. Cartoon Network is dead. You know what they say? Go woke, go broke. And you know what? Steven Universe did that anti-universe ad like 8 years ago, and look where Cartoon Network are now.
Fucking
Gone
goddamn it.
forever.
I was literally about to go, woo, yeah, but I guess not. This is a boo, tomato, tomato, huh? They really shut down Adult Swim, Brian? Is that what you're saying?
Well, okay, here we go, Taylor.
Oh, and by the way, before I say anything else, I just looked up Adult Swim news, and apparently Adult Swim was launched September 2nd, 2001, which
Oh
is
yeah,
hilarious.
that's a big piece of Adult Swim lore. Eventually, we should do like an Adult Swim series, but I mean that's
Yes.
going to be a big project, so we'll talk about it more. But that's the thing I've had on the back burner for a while. So here's the deal. Actually, Cartoon Network is fine. The Cartoon Network studio has closed because animation, like all of the arts, is suffering now, which I think could have issues as far as like cartoonists and producers being able to maintain their autonomy. It's now being moved into like some larger Turner studios instead of having its own studio, which sucks, sure. The funny thing about that is if you look on Twitter right now, you'll see millions of guys our age who haven't actually read these articles and are going, well, that's it. I'm going to just fucking kill myself because I guess I'm never going to get to watch Powerpuff Girls again because Zoomers don't like cartoons the way I did. Just lines and lines of millennials screeching because I just can't believe Cartoon Network's gone. Can't believe it. Wow. The cartoons will never be the same. Like the building's closed, but how long do you think it's been since anything was actually produced in that building of note, anyways? Also, I was thinking about this today. How many of these guys do you think, like, I like cartoons. I like a lot of old Cartoon Network shows. I would say I watch Adult Swim stuff, like old stuff from my youth, pretty regularly, like when I'm just unwinding, but I don't keep up with the network. Do you think any of these guys were watching whatever the fuck was on Cartoon Network last year and they're like, well, I can never watch that again?
Oh no, never. A
No.
lot of these people, whenever there's some like nostalgic thing that, we loved as kids and haven't thought about in 25, like Habbo Hotel, like if Habbo Hotel closed down, like the actual
I'm
fucking
so sad.
game,
I'll never get to play it again. Like, bitch, you were done playing it.
you haven't played it in 20 years. You played it before the pools closed meme, for God's sakes. Like
Yeah.
nobody gives a fuck.
So a big part of this, I guess, misinformation started a Twitter account that works with a cartoonists union or animators union, I should say, made a post, started a hashtag called Rest in Peace Cartoon Network. And kind of misleading, but their actual reason was they were kind of implying that Cartoon Network died to get people to read their posts about what's happening to animators right now. A lot of AI is being used to take work from animators, and that is part of why Cartoon Network Studios is closed, just because they don't have animators anymore. They're not really paying for them the way they were. But a lot of these, I don't know, these fucking dorks, they don't care about that, right? They just care that the building is gone. And again, they haven't thought about it in 20 years. They're like, oh boy, I guess I'll never get to watch Billy and Mandy again.
You know what, Brian? They might have actually had really good animators if 9/11 hadn't happened, because that's another piece of Cartoon Network lore, if you know what I'm talking about.
That's an unfortunate thing is, actually, Aqua Teen Hunger Force was supposed to be animated by Paul Dini, but because of 9/11, they had to make it just little cut and paste movements. But originally, it was supposed to be like a Disney level animation.
Hell yeah. So, I mean, that's the thing, right? We talk about nostalgia. We talk about, times gone by and where did all the time go? I think that actually leads perfectly into our review already. Would you agree with that, Brian? Because that's exactly what the fuck this movie's about.
You don't say. I thought this movie was about a cool guy who had the world on a string and fucked lots of ladies and everyone loved him.
I mean, that is kind of what the movie wants you to think.
Doing that fucking embarrassing meme that's like, you're missing the point by idolizing them. But it's it's Burt Lancaster in The Swimmer.
We should do that. Like get like a monochrome, like fucking TikTok edit. Do a fan cam of Burt Lancaster and it just has the fucking words over it.
By idolizing them starter packets. Yeah, Burt Lancaster in this.
But yeah, so speaking of our review this week is, of course, the classic film, The Swimmer, came out in 1968. It came out in May of 1968. So this is technically a Hays Code film, although I think we talked about it, and I think you said the exact phrase, but this is a transitional movie into New Hollywood.
That was the thing that really hit me. I mean, so I saw this about a month ago for the first time. I'd kind of known that it existed. Like, I knew Burt Lancaster was in a movie called The Swimmer, but I'd never seen it. I put it on as kind of a lark, and I was kind of like, what the fuck's going on with this movie? And about 15, 20 minutes in, I literally sent you a message, and I was like, Taylor, I'm watching this movie, and we need to talk about it. It's insane. So we talk a lot about New Hollywood. I'd say we've come back to that well a lot because it's such a pivotal, generational, transitory kind of moment in U.S. pop culture. We don't really talk about the Hays Code that much because I think, frankly, that's probably an era of film that both you and I just, not that we're not interested in it, I just think maybe it's not where either of us have a ton of expertise in, speaking for myself at least.
No, honestly, like, for me anyway, is that the vast majority of films that I love and have knowledge of 70s, 80s, 90s to the modern age. Like, obviously there are movies produced in especially 50s horror movies, like the Vincent Price style horror movies and stuff. Exactly. And a lot of foreign films from that era of when America was in the Hays Code era. Like a lot of that stuff I have interest in, but typical mainstream American films from that era, I have very little interest in for the most part. Because I think a lot of them, I mean, they were purposefully hamstringed artistically. They just were.
Well, and the thing with this too is, I love talking about New Hollywood as an era. I know that's hack and it's me being a nostalgia pop culture. That's such a great period in pop culture history. It really is. There will never be another time like that. The thing with The Swimmer is that this is an early kind of prototype of it. This is trying to do New Hollywood at the end of the Hays Code. This is kind of feeling in the shadows towards that sort of I guess anti-authoritarian kind of subversive thing. Trying to get to it within the Hays Code.
And not only that, but on top of it, having incredibly Hays Code, 60s and 50s aesthetics and performances on top of it. It's kind of surreal, to be honest with you.
Yes, it is. It totally is. One of my thoughts on my rewatch of this was, so this is a movie that I've learned and I wouldn't not surprised, is very important to a lot of baby boomers because they saw it when they were young and they were kind of coming of age and they were watching it and they're like, well, this is a movie about my square parents and their bullshit life. And they were right to think that, right? Yeah. So what I think watching this as old millennials is oh, this is boomers. And I don't mean that in a mean way or a cynical way. I mean, this is their life. This is going through all of these tumultuous and kind of incredible creative changes and ending up where they're at.
No, absolutely. And before we get too much into the plot here, because there's a lot to talk about in the plot here, and I
Yeah.
agree with everything here. I just want to continue on with the details here. So this movie was rated PG/M. That's how early in New Hollywood that it is. That it still had the M rating, which apparently is just what the equivalent of PG is. And what I think is interesting, and I think that explains a lot of why some like really fucked up, like I should say what would be PG-13 or even R films nowadays were PG back then, because PG was literally the equivalent of like, you're a borderline adult. You should not be seeing this movie without a parent, which is mind-boggling because a PG movie nowadays is something that's literally above like a pants-shitting baby level. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if you're not a literal pants-shitting toddler, that's what a PG is.
But
And that's completely the opposite of what that was, 30, 40, 50
yeah,
years ago.
parental guidance that's what they literally meant. I also think there wasn't this idea that like kids should never see these movies because they need to be, I hate to sound like a fucking boomer, but there wasn't so much of a thing I think about protecting kids from art in quite the same way. There was like, hey, if your kids are going to see this, you should see it with them. You should put it into context, which is, I actually think, a pretty respectable way to like look at movies. It's actually kind of surprising that that was the American rating system for so long. Once PG-13 comes in, like you said, PG just means baby movies.
Essentially, yeah. And speaking of somebody who made baby movies, so this movie was directed by Frank Perry, and the first trivia fact I had here for this episode is after the first rough cut was screened, Sidney Pollack replaced director Frank Perry, with the latter still remaining the credited director for contractual reasons. And allegedly, Perry did not finish directing this film because of creative differences and was fired by producer Sam Spiegel, which is really sad because, I've looked at some of the movies that Frank Perry has done since then, including a movie that I think we're almost certainly going to review at one point. And to me, like, this guy is somebody who had a very clear artistic vision just in general. And the fact they fired him essentially for creative differences, like, what were the creative differences that could have fucking made it so unpalatable? I just genuinely don't understand.
Like, yeah, I'd be curious to know what those were as well.
And this movie was also written by his wife, Eleanor Perry, and it was based on the short story of the same name by author John Cheever. It was produced by Frank Perry, Roger Lewis, and I assume Sam Spiegel was somewhere in the background. Maybe he was involved in... Was this a Columbia Pictures movie? I can't remember what the studio was at the moment. I know they had the big one with the torch lady. I can't remember which studio.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I believe that is Columbia.
Hell yeah. And then Frank Perry was mostly a director and producer. He was most well known for directing and or producing such movies as David Lisa, this movie, The Last Summer, which, spoilers, that may be a movie we're going to review because that movie sounds fucking bonkers, just like this movie. Diary of a Mad Housewife, Moby Dearest, which I think is one of the most unfairly maligned movies ever. The fact that was like, I mean, the Razzies are complete hack bullshit anyways, but the fact that that was one of the first Razzies to me is a fucking crying shame. I'm sorry. That is a nonsense.
Razzies is dumb bullshit. I don't know. I think the Razzies sucks. I don't think they know what's good about movies.
They don't. And he also directed and or produced, once again, Monsignor, Compromising Positions, and the movie Hello Again. And Eleanor Perry mostly worked on her husband's films. She also wrote the screenplays for the film The Lady in the Car with Glasses and A Gun and the Man Who Loved Cat Dancing. Now, all those titles alone sound like fucking nutso titles alone. I did not look at the synopsis of those, but those sound like fucking fun 60s and 70s fucking grindhouse romps. And speaking of grindhouse, actually, I didn't put this trivia fact in here, but, once again, this is a Burt Lancaster movie, still technically a classic Hollywood Hays Code movie, but the most recent release and the most comprehensive release is from Grindhouse Productions releasing. And I'm like, this is a weird fucking movie to have this company do it. Cause I look at some of their titles and they're definitely not Burt Lancaster movies. I'll just say that.
No, that's actually the most prestigious release this film has gotten to date.
Which is just absolutely fucking nuts to me. And don't get me wrong, obviously, this movie is definitely this one is not like the other of a lot of those Grindhouse releasing things, right? But this is a fucking strange movie. This is a very fucking weird movie with, never mind, we'll get to it when the plot comes, but trust me, whatever you think this movie is, it is not what this movie is. That is absolutely not what this movie is. And then I mentioned Roger Lewis, one of the producers, was mostly a TV writer. He produced only 2 films, this film and the movie The Pawnbroker, which I believe The Pawnbroker is also a very critically acclaimed movie. And this movie is about 95 minutes long. It did not have a listed budget or box office, but I do know that this movie did very terribly at the box office, apparently. It was apparently a complete box office bomb, and it also had issues funding its budget. In fact, Burt Lancaster put the equivalent of almost $100,000 of his own money just to finish the fucking movie. Like, people did not really have much confidence in this movie for whatever reason. And like, it's one of those things too where it's like, this movie's budget couldn't have been that high because it mostly takes place in people's backyards.
Yeah, and watching it now, I think because it is, just to get it out of the way, this is actually an exceptionally well-made film, and it is very watchable. Watching it now, it might be kind of hard to imagine that it was. I mean, it was not only bombed, but like the critics that did see it, a lot of them did not like it. It was panned, not entirely, but by more than a few major publications. And I think that, I mean, I think maybe, again, this is at the tail end of the Hays Code. People might have been mad that it wasn't what they expected it to be. A certain type of person might have come to see this movie and been kind of pissed off. And I'm going to say maybe it's a type of person who saw a little bit of themselves in Burt Lancaster.
Yes, and well, speaking of critics, so on Rotten Tomatoes now, it has 100% critic score, which I think is our first 100% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, and it has an 82% audience score. So needless to say, it's like universally loved now, but definitely at the time, it was definitely not. Although one of the early major critics to like this movie was Roger Ebert, so I got to give him credit for that.
Yeah, truly.
And another trivia fact I had here is I didn't know quite where to put it, so I decided to put it right here. But this is the debut film score by composer Marvin Hamlisch, and this is a phenomenal score. I think we need to talk about. Like, the soundtrack in this is so classic Hollywood. Interestingly enough, Brian, actually, I learned this from, of all people, because apparently this is one of his favorite films, but I learned this from fucking Gilbert Gottfried, rest in peace, that Marvin Hamlisch was about like 24, 25 when he wrote the score for this, which is nuts.
The score for this is, I mean, it is just classic. It's very lush and jazzy and has these like hinges of kind of anxiety and kind of, it's kind of ominous at times, but it's very jazzy and very full and orchestral.
And in fact, one of the songs, once we get to that scene, literally sounds like the Simpsons theme, which is so funny to me.
I know, yeah, I thought that too.
Oh, Lord. But anyway, so let's finally get into the synopsis here. So the movie begins in a woodland bordering a well-off suburb in Connecticut. A fit and tanned Ned Merrill, played by Burt Lancaster. And I had two trivia facts associated with this. So Burt Lancaster always insisted that this was both his best and his favorite film of his career, which I can see why. He is phenomenal in this movie. I mean, he looks fucking phenomenal. He was like 55 when this movie was made. And I don't necessarily want to get into like old Hollywood bodies or whatever, but he is.
And he looks like a millennial looks now.
Yeah. You know what he actually looks like? In this movie, he looks exactly like modern George Clooney. It's hilarious. He looks strikingly like George Clooney.
I see what you mean. That didn't occur to me, but yeah.
So, but yeah, no, he looks absolutely fucking phenomenal in this movie. Yeah, we talk about phenomenal. He emerges wearing only a bathing suit. He drops by a pool party held by his old friends, and they offer him a cocktail while nursing hangovers from the night before. As they share stories, Ned realizes there is a series of backyard swimming pools that could form a quote-unquote river back to his house, making it possible for him to swim his way back home. Ned dives into the pool, emerging at the other end, and begins his journey. Ned's behavior perplexes his friends. Now, rewatching this, because once you get to the end of the movie, all these early scenes change the complete context.
Yes.
Change the complete context. And like when you're watching this movie, right, it begins with, scenes of woodland, like, deer and fucking ducks and everyone's flying, like everything's flying or whatever, and like prancing around. And then you see him just come out of the woods like a fucking fairy tale or something. And like, he's not actually at the party at first. He just walks into his party and they're like, oh, hey, how you been? And trust me, that'll come back later because at the end of this movie, you'll maybe be thinking, where the fuck did he come from?
Well, because like at face value at this scene, it's, he's hanging out with his kind of suburban, kind of like well-to-do like friends, and they're having their little cocktails and they're flirting and they're being boring old people, right?
Yeah, no, I mean,
he's being a show-off. He's showing off how he still can swim more than the other guys in his friend group can swim, and he still feels young and fit, and he feels great, and kind of talking down to all of his friends, and they're like, oh, yeah, that sure is great,
No, absolutely. At one point, when he talks about swimming back, there's like, why would you ever want to do that? And that's also a line that comes back, trust me.
Well, because at this point we're thinking like, why would you want to do that? Because it's kind of a weird, it's like nonsensical and kind of whimsical. That's how it seems now. You're like, why would you want to do this kind of silly, weird thing?
It's the equivalent of like if there was a jock fucking something awful, that'd be like a jock goon project.
Yes. Yep.
It's exactly what the fuck it is. But yeah, so he meets various kinds of people, including one woman that he greets by slapping her on the ass. And she's like, "Oh, it's Ned." And I'm like, damn, that is some Sigma right there. That is a significant connection where you could slap a girl in the ass you haven't seen in years. And she's like, "Oh my God, it's you." And like is
Oh,
very
great.
happy to see you. Like that is, man, wow.
This is what they took from you.
Well, speaking of what they took from you, as Ned travels, he encounters other neighbors. He meets 20-year-old Julie, played by the actress Janet Langard, who used to babysit his daughters, whom he repeatedly refers to as at home playing tennis, and reveals his plan to her. She joins him. They crash another pool party and sip champagne. Now, this is so funny. I love all of the scenes where he brings her to the party or whatever, and it's like, "Oh, this is the babysitter." And it's like, "Well, you better go home." And he's like, "No, I'm with her." And it's like, well, have fun with that, because this is Burt Lancaster. Once again, is like 55. She's 20 years old.
Well, and she's also like their relationship is weird, not just because of the age gap, right? But because it's clearly when you first watch this, you kind of are thinking as the audience that maybe like you're perceiving it as weird because we're living in a different era. But the sense is kind of like, I hate to talk about the grooming thing, but it's that he's coming in and this is a girl that doesn't really know him the way everyone else does, right? So he's able to talk up to her the way that he likes to. Because that's all Burt Lancaster does the whole movie is he talks up.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I love it too, as that the more he talks up, the less people believe in his bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
it's awesome. So while chatting in a grove of trees, Julie reveals that she had a schoolgirl crush on Ned. After she tells him about 2 sexual incidents in her workplace, Ned begins talking about how he will protect her, making plans for the 2 of them. Discomforted by his intimate approaches, Julie runs away. Now, there's so much like psychosexuality like in this scene. I also love it too, where she confesses her like old crush when she was literally 11. He's like, "I wish you would have told me about it.
I wish
back
you would have
then."
told me.
And it's
And
like, wait, what? You want to repeat that, bro?
It kind of almost seems on my second viewing of this, it seems like she feels that way too when he says that. Like she's saying, "Oh, I had such a crush on you," to be like cute and flirty. And then he says like, "Oh, I wish you would have told me." And it seems like we as the audience are taken aback by that, but she kind of is too, right?
Well, yeah, she's just like, "Well, yeah, that was schoolgirl crush, but the fact that you wanted me to tell, like, bro, you're literally a pedophile. Like, that is literally pedophile." Like,
Yeah.
and we're not exaggerating. Like, obviously a lot of the age gap stuff gets unfairly maligned as pedophile stuff, but he's straight up acting like a pedophile in this.
No, this
specific
is
scene.
weird. He's also going through this weird thing where, so the scene where he says like he's going to protect her, right? He's going to pick her up from work and drive her home and all this, and he's making all these grand plans. And that switches the way she engages with him because it's kind of like this role reversal. Or when they first start interacting, she's really trying to make herself cute to him. She's trying to impress him and seem smart and funny and to this like cool, worldly older guy. And in that moment, it's like she's seeing that he's like kind of like this desperate loser, right?
This desperate, creepy fucking loser, exactly. And trust me, that impression only gets more prominent.
We should also point out there is a whole scene where, because a big thing with Burt Lancaster, I mean, I'm just going to call him Burt Lancaster throughout the episode, okay?
Yeah.
Is that he's always going, like, he's so athletic. He's not old at all. He feels like he's in his 20s. So he's trying to run and jump and skip with this girl. And he tries to jump over a fence and hurts his leg, which is the first of several injuries that he incurs on his journey here. But it's an important part of this because it's also the first moment in their interaction where, like, it's the first direct chink in Lancaster's armor that you see, where you're like, "Oh, he fucked up his leg and he's pretending not to."
Yeah, right. So after all that, Ned meets a wealthy nudist, older couple who are unbothered by his eccentric behavior, but also unimpressed by his posturing. Oh yeah, and this scene's also great. They're talking to their daughter on the phone. And she's like, "I don't want to come over." And he's like, "Well, why don't you want to come over?" And it's like, "Because you guys are weird nudists. I don't want you being around my children."
Yeah.
Which, honestly, wasn't there a nudist episode of Guys?
Probably.
I think there was. So, and hearing a lot of the stuff on there, I'm like, I can see why you wouldn't want your children around these people. Not that they're like weird, or not necessarily that they're even that weird or creepy, but it's just like, why are you so insistent on being naked? I just genuinely don't like. They're so insistent on it.
Well, like, so this scene when he encounters the nudists, right? This is the first part where one of my favorite themes of this movie is laid clear. So our protagonist is a guy who about 10 years earlier, maybe 15 years earlier, was probably like hot shit in his little enclave in his town. Like a 1950s Adam Age nuclear family guy with 2-car garage and a picket fence and a color TV. And boy, he sure is living the post-war dream, right? And he's kind of like the backdrop of this movie to me is 1964 to 68, the time it was written and the time the movie came out, respectively, which is where all this great social change is happening. And while all this is happening, he's kind of in his little suburb, obsessing over this period of time where everything was like perfect for him, right? And his meeting with the nudists is kind of like, this is this weird kind of beatnik bohemian thing that he doesn't really understand. And he doesn't feel quite as bleeding edge as he did, you know?
Yeah, actually, and then also another thing that just preceded this scene I want to talk about. So there are, I believe, 2 black characters in this entire movie. And they're both, one of them is a like bartender, and the other is the person who like drives people onto the property of like the nudist couple. Is right? I think it's the nudist couple. And
Yes.
I think that's also interesting too, because once again, this movie was made in 1966. It wasn't released until 1968. And that was a very prominent time in, of course, American civil rights. And a lot of the sort of like Jim Crow sort of norms are being finally pushed aside, at least to a certain extent, right? And like he has a very interesting conversation with especially the black cab driver or whatever. And he's like, oh, I thought you were a different person or whatever. Like he's seeing this social change even on this very white environment. He's still seeing that.
It's like just beyond the borders of his neighborhood. We are aware that these things are starting to happen.
Exactly. So it's very much about the rapid pass of time that happened in the 60s for motherfucking sure. And then he eventually encounters Kevin, a lonely young boy whom he tries to teach how to swim. They use an abandoned empty pool, which Ned urges the boy to imagine is filled with water. The boy warms up to his methods and is soon, quote unquote, swimming the length of the empty pool. As Ned takes his leave, he glances back and sees the boy bouncing on the diving board over the deep end of the empty pool. He rushes back to remove him from the diving board, then departs. That's also a very interesting scene to me because, I mean, a lot of this movie, once again, it feels like a fever dream. A lot of it feels like, you know, whisperings of nostalgia.
Does it feel maybe a little bit like someone having kind of a psychotic break? Kind of like the stress of their life getting to them?
That could be too. It might even be an allegory for his own childhood. Maybe?
So I hadn't thought of that. I see what you mean. My read on it is that it's about his absence from his separation from his own family, right? He has kids. We are aware that our protagonist has kids who we never see. He doesn't really talk about in anything except for a kind of superficial, glowing way. And he meets this kid who is a little kid, and he still talks himself up to the kid. He still was like, I'm going to be a big shot to this lonely little kid. And like they do this thing where they pretend to swim through the empty pool because he needs to swim through the pool because of his goon project. And, you know, him and the kid bond and they have a good time. And of course, just to elaborate, as he's leaving, he hears the kid on the diving board. And he thinks, oh no, I told that kid that the water was real. If we wanted to be real, he's going to jump off the diving board and die. And he runs back and the kid goes like, no, I'm not going to jump off the diving board. I'm not an idiot. But my read on that is kind of Burt Lancaster thinks that he's so cool. He's made such an impression on this kid. This kid is now going to jump off a diving board thinking the water will catch him. And the kid's like, no.
Yeah, what the
weird
fuck?
Guy.
You old weird man. Well, speaking of weird old man, his odyssey continues. So Ned fails to make more than a superficial connection with the people he meets, being obsessed with his journey and becoming increasingly out of touch with reality. The neighborhood consists of judgmental, well-heeled people intent on one-upmanship, and Ned is confused by hints that his life might not be as untroubled as he believes. Ned walks into another party where the hostess calls him a gatecrasher. He encounters a girl named Joan, played by Joan Rivers, and also
the pod.
Trivia
She's
fact,
looking good in this.
Well, actually, speaking of looking good in this, trivia fact here is that this was her very first film.
I was after I watched this movie the first time about a month ago or so. I was looking up pictures of Joan Rivers from this area. She's kind of a baddie. I like her face. I like her voice a lot.
Hell yeah! I like her later career voice and her later career face. That's what I'm mostly into.
I just like chicks with like mean, funny chicks with weird voices.
Yeah. Ned asked her to join him. And Joan is intrigued until his speech becomes more fantastical. And yeah, that's the thing is like, and we're just going to say it right now. A lot of his journey just kind of coincides with him becoming more and more incoherent. He just talks more and more about all these things he's going to do and talks himself up. And like, the more he moves on, the more people are just like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, you've met people like that who are clearly not doing great. if you ever met like as like a severe, remember in your youth, maybe you met like a severe couch guy who was crashing with his friends, but he was just talking about all the cool shit he knew and all the cool shit he was going to do. And he just couldn't, and you'd be like, yeah, that's cool, man. And he would just keep going and have this glazed look in his eyes.
I met an individual like that recently at Best Buy. No, I'm just kidding. We might save that story for another episode, but it's a really funny ass story.
Truly, that is an old millennial story. Like being in Best Buy even is some old millennial shit.
Yeah. A friend leads her away from him. Ned jumps into the pool, making a big splash, which grabs the attention of the guests. When he emerges from the water, he notices a hot dog cart that used to be his. Ned gets into a spat with the homeowner who claims to have bought it at a white elephant sale. I also love the scene, by the way, because like, wait, that's my hot dog cart.
I love this hot dog cart, is a line in the film.
Yeah. He's like, I'll buy it from you. I'll pay double. I'll give you $100. Like, $100 for this hunk of junk? And he's like, no, it means a lot to me. I used to play with my kids in it or whatever.
Yeah, like when you're a big shot, you have your own hot dog cart and you pretend that you're the hot dog man.
Yeah.
You get the little paper hat on and the little fucking smock, and you're like, I could eat as many hot dogs as I want.
To be fair, super rich fucks love cosplaying as like minimum wage employees, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I think. It's like, so when he was king shit at Fuck Mountain, he had his little hot dog cart and he was like, I'm the hot dog man. Do.
Oh god, it's so funny. And I talk about a lot of these scenes are really funny, and I mean some of them are obviously disturbing. The next scene here is easily the most disturbing. So Ned shows up at the backyard pool of Shirley Abbott, played by Janice Rule, a stage actress with whom he had an affair several years earlier. His warm memories of their time together contrast with her own experience of being the other woman. Unable to reconcile his feelings with the pain he caused, Ned wades into the deep end of the pool and leaves. Now, this whole scene is, I mean, honestly...
It goes on forever. And it's a great scene, but it's rough.
It's a great scene. It is rough. Both the performances are obviously great. If this was like a real situation, this would be the prelude to a sexual assault. Like, just being honest with you.
And that's the thing is, like, I think some audiences watching this now, and when I first viewed this film, and by the time I got to this point, I'd kind of figured out what was going on. But you might think in regards to its attitudes towards women, oh, this is a regressive film by regressive filmmakers from the 60s. I'd say this scene makes it pretty clear this is specifically, like, not that. This is a scene about him denying this woman's, like, autonomy and her experience and, like, insisting that his experience is her reality.
Exactly, especially when she basically pleads literally cries and screams that just like, get the fuck away from me. You had your chance. You ignored me. You neglected me. You made me feel like a lesser and of course she was treated as lesser of a person.
And she's crying and he's saying these really manipulative things to her, things that are going to really affect her or remind her of things. I think he does grab her and kind of tries to kiss her at one point or something pretty forcefully. He's all up in her space. It's tough to watch. And of course, eventually, one of my favorite scenes in the movie, if you saw it out of context, it would be funny because it's so over the top. But in context, it's just, the whole scene's so chilling that it does actually work, is her saying to him to get him to finally leave, I never liked it, meaning sleeping with him, the relationship, whatever. I never liked it. And Burt Lancaster screams, probably to convince himself, you loved it. Yeah. And which would be, again, if you saw that out of context, I think it would seem very cheesy and you'd be like, what is this? But in context, it's just a really rough scene.
It really fucking is. Jesus Christ. All right. So after that, and trust me, we're going to go back to that specific scene there because there's a lot to talk about. And one of the Amazon reviews I have is certainly going to talk about that scene in particular, and we're going to call them idiots. So anyways, we're in the very final stretch of this movie. So Ned eventually trudges barefoot alongside a busy highway, which is an awesome scene, by the way, because that's basically the experience of literally everybody who doesn't have a car trying to walk to and from work in America.
Also, so when he's along the highway, that's when you finally get a look at him, Ned, that is just by himself. And you can see he's walking with a limp. He's pretty disheveled at this point. Like, he does not look the way he looked in the beginning of the movie, with the sun glistening upon him and his leathery old man skin fresh out of the fucking swimming pool. Like, he looks jacked up.
No, he really does. He looked absolutely fucked up. And then eventually he gets to a crowded public swimming pool where he doesn't even have 50 cents for the entrance. So basically, he's like, oh, come on, just let me in. And the guy's like, no, you don't have any money. He's like, please, I'll pay you back. And that's the thing, like, he's always telling people he will always pay them back. He'll always do this and that and this and that. And everybody treats him like, yeah, right, whatever. And that really gives you the impression that this guy screwed over basically everybody. Like, straight up, screwed over
everyone in
fucking
town.
Everybody.
He owes everyone money.
Yeah. I'll pay you. Was it I'll pay you tomorrow for a hamburger today or whatever? That's
Yeah,
basically.
wimpy.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Afterwards, he encounters a group of local shop owners who derisively ask him, "How do you like our water?" Oh, also, I also one of them gives him the 50 cents to come in. He takes a shower beforehand because of at a lot of pools they basically tell you to wash off before you get in because they don't want all your stinky BO in their pool water. I mean, they already get enough piss as it is in there. And then
Yeah, it's like 70% piss.
yeah, right. And then he comes out and the guy's like, no, no, your feet too. And then eventually you like see his feet and his feet are just fucking jacked because he's walked 8+ miles with no shoes on throughout all this. So his feet have like every type of like tetanus possible because he stepped on like 50 rusty nails or something, I bet. Like,
Yeah, it's oh my God.
well, that's the thing though. He goes nudist and he's a barefoot guy. He's two types of guys already in this movie.
And a swimming pool guy. He's a swimming guy. A hot dog guy.
Yeah, he's a hot dog guy. He goes along with Timmy from The Whitest Kids You Know. It's like, how many hot dogs you've had today? It's like 6. He's like, you've had 6 hot dogs today, which is a great sketch, by the way. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yes.
But yeah, so I love it. He also goes to this public swimming pool and he tries swimming through it like he's trying to swim through all the others. He's getting his face full of like 80 and like 5-year-old kid asses trying to like just swim through this fucking pool. Yeah, he's seeing all like the fucking turds in there and the piss.
Swallowing a bunch of piss right in the pool.
Yeah. And then his eyes are red and they're like, "Hey, how do you like our water?" And he's like, "Yeah, this is great. I'm just enjoying my day." And then this is where he finally meets the people and these are like the working class schlubs of this town essentially. And they're just like they're the least willing to put up with, I mean, out of everybody, they're the least willing to put up with his like they know immediately he scammed them. All like not even a question.
So Ned's other rich suburban friends at the beginning of the movie, you start to by now we kind of know what's going on, right? We have an idea what's going on, that Ned is not who he presents himself to be. So when he's breaking, he's going, "I'm so young, I'm so fit, I'm so good." And his friends are like, "Yeah, you sure are great. You sure are doing good. Boy, you sure are as well. Boy, we all love you, Ned." You're like, "Oh, okay." They're kind of humoring him because they're still kind of where he was at. As he goes through the neighborhood, like when he meets his neighbors, he crashes their party. They have his hot dog cart. These are people who are kind of they're like, "Well, this guy, he fell off. He's not around us anymore. He wasn't invited. He was rude to us when he's around. We're going to be rude to him now." Now he is at a public pool, which he never had to go to. He hangs out with people that own pools. He sleeps with women that own pools. He's at the public pool now. And imagine the shit that he treated these people like a few years ago.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. It's really like these are the people that he has fucked over, maybe more so than maybe outside of obviously the woman he had an affair with, but everybody else, like he has fucked over these people.
Well, the town.
And
he's
the
fucked
town,
over
royally.
the town. It's that classic expression. It's the people you meet on your way back or the way down, right?
Exactly, essentially, yeah. But eventually they, start braiding him and like basically asking where the fuck their money is that he basically stole. And then he flees and he flees over this like rock face at the pool.
Well,
it's awesome.
So this is arguably a more important reveal than him owing all these people's money. We revealed that he runs or ran some kind of business and it's falling apart. We hear a story where Ned's daughters were friends with the children of this couple who are berating Ned here. And they say, "You know what your daughters thought of you?" Because he's bragging about his daughters. He's bragging about his family like he always does. And they say, "Oh, they laugh about you and they're embarrassed of you." And Ned clearly is shocked by this. And it's, "No, my daughters love me. They respect me." It's pretty awful.
It is. And then on top of it, too, they basically insinuate that they're fucking awful, too. They're like in trouble with the law all the time and stuff like that. And they're fuck ups. Never mind. I'll get to my bit after we're done with the synopsis because I have a perfect bit for the ending of this movie. So, and this is the very final, last 5 minutes. The skies darken and rain begins falling amid a downpour at sunset. A shivering, limping Ned staggers home. He finally gets home. The tennis court where his daughters were supposedly playing is in disrepair, and his house is locked and deserted with several windows broken. Anguished Ned repeatedly tries to open the door before huddling down in the doorway in the rainstorm. And the movie ends in a still frame of him crying, seeing his abandoned home, and just huddled.
And Ned finally raises his fist and he screams to this guy, "No, I just need to get inside and lay on my boiling hot ouch.
Yeah.
And then the screen fades and it just says the end as melancholy strings play.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So, and that's the end of the synopsis here. So, and that's the thing though. Burt Lancaster in this movie is the 60s, like fucking Mad Men style hot couch guy. That's what he is. He is a hot couch guy with all these fantastical fucking dreams and everything, but he's a fucking loser.
To piggyback off your point, Tyler, this is a late in life hot couch guy, which is much sadder.
Yeah, okay. Very, yes.
So Taylor, let's just say, and I think I've alluded to it before, I'm a little bit of a hot couch guy. Like in the best possible way, I think. I live in a studio apartment. I listen to a lot of rock music. I have Black Flag posters on my wall. I eat garbage. But I've been like that my whole life. That's just how I want to be and how I pursue my life. Now, Ned is a guy who was, again, he is king shit of fuck mountain. He was the madman guy. He was a big guy. He was like, I run the local business. Everybody loves me. I fuck all the hot ladies. And now he's a fucking loser. And it's so much worse to be that guy and have treated everyone like shit and then be a loser because everybody fucking hates you now.
Well, yeah, exactly. Being a middle-aged hot couch, being a sudden middle-aged hot couch guy has to be the worst kind because like you don't have the base of being that kind of affable loser until you hit 50.
You can be a
that's crazy.
Hot couch guy, and I think it's like, okay, that's a cool guy. He's a kind of, whatever. He's rolling, This guy, he's had the hot couch thrust upon him. He was pushed out of a chilled mattress and onto a hot couch.
That's the thing. I think very soon we might have a president who's going to be an extremely late in life hot couch guy. Just watching him after he loses.
I think pretty soon we're going to have a president who's a hospice bed guy.
Yeah. When he I should say not when, it's certainly possible he could win. But anyways, if he loses the election, he's like 82 and now he's the fucking hot couch guy. He's like, hey, listen, fat, my kids love me. And it's like, well, first off, one of your kids is dead and the other's Hunter Biden. He's like, shut up, fat.
This movie with Joe Biden as Ned, holy shit.
We need to remake this with Joe Biden when he loses the election.
Oh my God. I mean, we could do it now. We make Trump one of the neighbors, with a hot dog cart.
Yeah. It's like, no. Listen, everybody loves my hot dog cart. Everybody's
always saying, I've always had this hot dog cart. I got it at the White Elephant sale. They say, you were the best at the White Elephant sale. You throw the best pool parties, even when people crash. They crash them, but I don't mind.
Hey, listen, all right. My nudist neighbor, he was a bad dude.
The nudist neighbor is like Bernie and Jill Stein.
Yeah. Oh, man, the girl that he, sexually harasses is, to be fair, all the 50 young girls he sexually harassed on camera. Never mind, this bit's getting really overwrought with all the references, but...
The thing is, it works. You were right.
It really works. And you know what? That's the thing. He used to be a lifeguard. That's the Corn Top story. He knows about pools.
Yeah, Biden just sitting on the steps of the White House lawn, locked out, just in disrepair, just weeping.
Yeah, as Melania was just like, I hate this house. It's so ugly. I don't want to put up Christmas trees.
You just put up her scary Christmas trees everywhere.
And Biden's just like, let me in.
Let me in, Jack.
Yeah. Listen, this is malarkey.
This is malarkey, exactly.
Oh, God. But speaking of malarkey, let's get into these motherfucking Amazon reviews. Now, interestingly enough, though, Brian, I will say, this is genuinely one of the least shitty Amazon review sections I've ever seen. Most of the reviews are actually pretty smart and well thought out. I was pretty surprised by that.
Well, I'm surprised by that, but also it kind of makes sense because this is such a classic Hollywood film, even though it's also very subversive and it takes twists and turns and it surprises you. You'd have to be a real asshole, I think, to give this the typical bad Amazon review. You'd have to be a real dumbass.
There were a couple, and I didn't include any of those because, to be honest with you, they all seem like purposeful contrarian shitheads. Whereas I think a lot of the ones that I do include on these reviews, I think are genuinely really earnest dumb people. But none of the bad reviews in this seemed legit or earnest, so I didn't include any of them on here. So the first review here is from Tim Lukeman, who gives us 5 stars. And the head of the review says, "The American dream turned nightmare." And the body of the review says, and this one is a long one, so get ready for it. Burt Lancaster gives one of his finest performances in this piercing adaptation of John Cheever's short story. His impressive physique and bearing providing an ironic and painful contrast to his crumbling self-confidence and disillusion. The film passes like a souring dream, compressing a lifetime into a single day, as Lancaster's Ned Merrill is inexorably brought up short by the realities of his life. Piece by piece, his illusions and aspirations are stripped away, a process reflected in the increasingly harsh and unflattering lighting of the film. When did it all go wrong for Ned? There are hints that even as a child, he pursued an unreachable ideal. Was he simply too sensitive from the very start, or were his childhood ideals subsumed in his ego, in the privilege he took for granted? Somewhere along the way, he lost himself in the facade of success he wore like golden armor, which couldn't protect or console him in the end. This is the fate of the American man who buys into an empty dream. It can only dissolve in the taste of wet ashes. Midlife strikes brutally and unforgivingly for such men. This film is 40 years old. This was a pretty old review. I think this actually might have been... Oh, no, there's one pre-9/11 review. This is not this one. But its message is just as timely as ever. If the superficial trappings of success have changed a bit, their hollow essence remains the same, trapping the latest generation of those who buy into the glittering lie. A cautionary tale to be sure. Scathing and terribly sad. Most highly recommended. And Tim Lukeman, you are the smartest person to ever be featured on the show in our Amazon reviews, like straight up. That was a pretty good analysis of this film, if you ask me.
Yeah, no, this person's on. They got it.
They're not like any of our S. Craig Zala reviews, for sure. This man has 1,000,000 times as many brain cells as those people.
Yeah, no shit. The thing is, it's weird. This movie is that rare case because it is heavy-handed, but it's also like pretty subtle in a way that I think is really hard to pull off doing both of those things.
Exactly, especially for like, once again, essentially what's technically a Hays Code film. Those were not very subtle movies, like straight up. They were, in fact, no, never mind. I think it actually goes into some of the reviews here, but the performances in here are very old Hollywood. And I don't necessarily even mean that in a bad way, because
No.
I like that style, but I can definitely understand why it's obviously not up to the more naturalistic acting
less
style.
naturalistic, kind of like, I don't know, more like Playhouse style.
Yes, exactly. And of course, Burt Lancaster is pretty much as classic Hollywood as you can get. That's not from like the fucking golden age of Hollywood.
Exactly.
But he does, of course, he does a great job. Everybody does a fucking great job in this movie. Even if it is obviously kind of stilted acting by modern standards, I think it still works very much.
I feel like a modern audience watching this on its own term, I think it would be pretty accessible.
Yeah, no, I totally think so too. I think especially the tropes that exist in this movie, what I described as very much the modified trope of the unreliable narrator is a very common one. The changing of people's perspectives and stuff like that. And, you know, it's almost kind of like a Western remake of Rashomon a little bit. Like,
yeah, I definitely thought there's some things about the presentation that reminded me of Rashomon. It's very much a thing where the more you watch this movie, the more you kind of see layers to it earlier on.
Oh, yes. This is a movie that, if to the audience at home, if you liked this movie on the first watch it again, because there's a lot of things that you'll miss in your first watch. Straight up. This is a movie that you need to watch several times. I think get every single subtlety that this movie offers. You need to watch it at least twice, if you ask me. And then our next review here is from, and this is such an old, I think this was literally a 1999 review. And this, you could tell because this person used their AOL.com as their username. So this is Evanson R at AOL.com. So this is a old AOL.com username. This person was able to use their whole name, which is awesome, who gave this 4 stars. And the head of the review says, underrated film that perfectly illustrates PTSD. And the body of the review says, this film, written and directed by the Perrys, a husband and wife team who are also responsible for several other films with mental health themes, stars Burt Lancaster, who does, in my opinion, a beautiful job. It is based on a short story by Cheevers, which it follows faithfully, in parentheses, with an added scene where the protagonist meets the young girl and obviously is recreating his youth. The directors were changed during the filming, I believe, and I'm not sure who did or redid several scenes. This is a film which I have used in my teaching of psychiatric residents to illustrate the diagnosis of PTSD, which I'm glad that you got that interpretation, but this doesn't strike me as PTSD. I'm going to be honest with you.
Not PTSD. I understand why this person is saying that, but I don't. I mean, he's definitely having a breakdown, but I don't think it's from trauma.
To be honest with you, he strikes me as somebody more with like narcissistic personality disorders.
Yeah, exactly.
PTSD.
Exactly. Okay, I guess I don't know enough about PTSD to speak to. I guess maybe the experience of losing his status and his wealth and his home and his family, maybe that's the trauma, I guess, but that's not necessarily my read on this. I don't disagree, but that's not the most important part of Ned's character, is that he's traumatized. To me, the most important part of his character is that he's an asshole, that he's a narcissist, like you said.
And he's also probably got borderline personality disorder on top of it, because he is basically unwilling to be abandoned, essentially. Or
complete user.
Yeah, exactly. Complete desperate avoidance of abandonment. That is definitely a character trait of him. But yeah, I would absolutely think he's much more narcissistic personality disorder than PTSD. But, hey, I don't teach people about mental health disorders, so what the fuck do I know? But I just don't get that read. I'm going to be honest with you. I just don't.
I mean, I guess the two aren't mutually exclusive, but I agree with you. But overall, I don't hate this review. Even if you wanted to argue that he could be traumatized, because again, I guess there's an argument for that. I don't think it's the most important part. He is he has gone through something. The takeaway from it to me isn't that he was traumatized so much as it's that he got what he deserved.
Yeah, essentially got what he deserved. Exactly.
Really?
Well, speaking of, this is a review that I very much disagree with. I was actually having a hard time finding reviews that weren't like shitpost reviews that I actually disagreed with here, but this is one that I actually found. So Miss P gives us 3 stars. And the header of the review says, not as enamored with it as some reviewers. And the body of the review says, I hadn't seen this film in years, and when I watched it just now, I was struck by how much acting has changed since it was made. I always felt that Lancaster overacted, and I think that's apparent in this film. The style of acting is so stilted and stylized. The extreme close-ups of his eyes and his reaction shots are so odd and unnatural. But that's the thing, though, is that this movie feels like a fever dream. I don't think it's meant to feel realistic.
You were experiencing a nervous breakdown with someone.
Exactly. So I completely disagree. I think that works perfectly with this kind of film, but whatever. That's all about perspective, I guess. Plus, in the age of #MeToo, I was really struck by the scene with the woman he had an affair with. She forcefully tells him no, but he persists until she has to punch him to get away from.
That's the point.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Me Too doesn't make this age well. It makes it more apparent the things that it's working on.
Yeah, exactly. Once again, we made the joke about this is not somebody who should be idealized. This is somebody who's a loser and a creep and a user.
Hang on. Well, I'm watching Deliverance and I get to the squeal like a piggy scene and I go, boy, you couldn't do this now because of Me Too.
It's watching that movie and shrugging my head so everybody knows I disagree with it. It just brought home to me how the culture reinforced the idea that no did not mean no. And it's like, but no, the movie is saying that no means no. It's very clearly saying that.
Yeah, this is a guy from an old period and changes are happening. And he's used to just being able to treat women and everyone however he wants. But he's not good. He's a bad guy for doing that.
No, exactly. Movie after movie relayed that message. I don't think you'd see a scene like that in a movie today. It made me uncomfortable.
You're fucking dumb.
Whereas at the time, I imagine some audiences were just
you wouldn't because every movie's for fucking babies.
It seems to be. He can't
see that in a Marvel movie.
He can't seem to understand why she wouldn't want his advances. Once again, that's the point. That's the point.
Boy, I'm just glad that I can see the new Tim Burton movie, Dark Shadows 4, where I won't have to see anything like that.
His acting at the end as he approaches his house is over the top. The way he sprawled across the front door, it's just not realistic at all. And actually, I would actually argue it's pretty fucking realistic.
Well, okay, we talked about how acting styles have changed and the naturalistic style is heavily favored now, at least on screen. But that doesn't mean that a less naturalistic, more theatrical style is bad. It's just a style of a different era, and it's good and it works in this film.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I don't know.
Yeah, so essentially she just continues, Miss P. I don't know. I'm just going to assume that's a woman. But they go on. Honestly, the worst parts of the review
Miss Piss.
Yeah, Miss Piss. Sweet Pea, the fucking System of a Down song. That's what this fucking woman is based off of. But no, honestly, this person's an absolute fucking idiot. I disagree entirely with this review. Because it's one of those things where, once again, and I've fallen into this trap in the past, and I'm trying to avoid it as much as I can. But once again, we talk about this. Showing something on screen is not an endorsement of that.
It's not.
Need to be very clear here.
It's not.
Like in some movies, filmmakers are endorsing that, and sometimes those things need to be called out, especially when it's really creepy and they abuse people, the performers and all that. That's obviously
showing something,
but that's not what this movie
is. Story isn't an endorsement. You know what? You can watch something in a movie and you aren't necessarily inherently sullied by it. Guess what? Like, if you think that this movie is unpleasant and upsetting to watch at times, good.
Yes,
that's how it's supposed to fucking make you feel.
Yeah, this isn't the fucking Vomit Dolls trilogy, okay? We don't need to preemptively cancel Frank Perry, okay? This is good.
Yeah,
this is fine. And then our final review here is from Sunshine, who gives us 1 star. And the header of the review says, maddening. And the body of the review says, so very disappointed. I've waited for years to finally watch this film and it won't play in Canada. Don't know why Amazon Canada keeps selling non-play discs to Canadians. And this is a
Fuck
trope
you,
I
Canada.
hadn't brought back in a while, is the reviewer who complains that they can't watch the movie because of some technical issue.
0 stars.
Yeah, I can only assume it's greed. Shame on you, Amazon. Please fix this problem by either not selling other regions within Canada, or more reasonable, tell us what region the DVD is playable in before we purchase them. Please try to make your customers happy.
I'm pretty sure that you can look up what region a DVD is on Amazon.
Yep. There are 6 DVD regions and there are 3 Blu-ray regions. It's not that complicated.
And how long does it take to figure out what type of DVD player you have?
Well, that's the thing. If you bought this in the US, it will play in Canada, because Canada and the US have the same exact DVD region. I've actually, no, bullshit. I bought DVDs and Blu-rays in Canada and they work perfectly fine in my player. So, I mean, maybe this person bought it from like, maybe when this, because I can't remember when this review was written, but maybe they bought like a Korean version of this movie or something.
Maybe she has like a French-Canadian DVD player.
Yeah, right. The menu just has, it just opens up and it goes, no. He's got a little mustache and then, no.
A long cigarette, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, Jesus Christ. But yes, those, yeah, he goes, none. He goes, no.
It spits the DVD out.
It's just a croissant when it plays right, and there's a croissant loading.
Yeah, the disc is shaped like a croissant.
Oh, geez. So
They're so cool.
Yeah, we're fucking awesome. And once again, to the audience at home, we will absolutely write the script for the Swimmer remake with Biden in it when he loses the election. We will absolutely do.
Oh my God.
We'll do a Pixar soda, but we'll
do
a Biden Swimmer. Oh, Jesus Christ. We're doing that.
We can.
We can, and we fuck. But
anyways, you know what? Depending on who wins, we could do it, because we could probably do it with Trump too.
Oh no, we absolutely fucking we
could do it. Whoever loses, we could do it with.
Yeah. Well, actually, it would be funnier if Trump loses, because we could just all do Trump impression scenes. Like, listen, I went in this garden 10 years ago, and it was a beautiful garden. You wouldn't believe it, but now it's a crappy garden. It's a terrible garden.
Of course, you can swim in the pool. People say you can't swim in the pool. There's no water. How are you going to swim in the pool? You just pretend it's there. You just move and you step and you swim.
And all of them was like, Don, you can't swim. Your hands are too tiny. He's like, no, I have the best swimming hands. They're big, big swimming hands.
We just put the most hack jokes in there. Will be like a trail of orange in this ad behind him as he's swimming.
Oh God, the woman that he had the affair with is Stormy Daniels.
One of the nudists is Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah,
it's Ghislaine and Epstein.
Oh, Jesus. But yes, that is our review of The Swimmer. And before we get into our pluggables, so final thoughts. Once again, this is a great film. This is a movie that has both antiquated, but not bad antiquated, but has antiquated old Hollywood aesthetics, but very much new Hollywood, like themes and tropes and a lot of like skeeziness and scuzziness, which is once again why it was in Grindhouse releasing, even though this is a 1968 movie with Burt Lancaster. This is a movie that is an absolute classic of both Hollywood and new Hollywood. This is a transitional film. And if you just love movies that very much subvert your expectations in a way that you would have never expected for the time of film it came out, I would 100% recommend it. And also, watch this movie at least twice to really just get all the themes really just embedded in your head, and you will certainly see things that you missed on your first watch.
Yeah, absolutely. You said pretty much everything I want to say. I want to just kind of add, this is, if you like a lot of the stuff we talk about here, if you like things kind of about the passage of time, or if you like dark satires, dark comedies, kind of things that examine like the weird bullshit that people do every day. If you like American Gothic writers, like I get big Flannery O'Connor vibes from this film, and probably from the short story it's based off of. I cannot recommend this film highly enough if you like basically any kind of classic cinema. I actually think even if you don't like classic cinema, if you like more contemporary things, if you like weird Grindhouse films, again, this was released by Grindhouse Films in its most lavish presentation, you'd probably still like this just because it's so strange. And because ultimately it's so well done, it's so well crafted thoroughly in every way, from the score to the performances to just the themes and the pacing, that, I mean, you'd have to be kind of a real dumbass to watch this and be like, that sucks.
Yeah,
really
just like
believe
Miss
that.
P. You would have to be a Miss P to not understand the themes of this movie.
I just don't understand watching the way that this character interacts with women and thinking, well, this is just how everyone made movies back. Because the thing is, this movie would be a lot grosser if it was reflective of the way that bad men treated women in the 60s. Because it's about how awful he is, it doesn't let it get that weird, you know?
No, absolutely. And, talk about Grindhouse releasing. So this is like a Funny Man situation. This is a 3-disc one with a CD on top of it. Like, that's how lovingly this release was.
The difference is that there are 3 discs worth of content to talk about and examine with The Swimmer, for sure. Whereas with Funny Man,
I just wonder where all the discs. Why are there so many discs with Funny Man? And also the booklet. I just don't.
I want to get it. I want to get that fucking weird set. I would do a bonus episode on it if I got it, but I just don't want to shell out that money for it.
No, because it's a lot of money. I think it was like a couple $100, if I'm not mistaken, to get
Like
shipped from
$200,
Germany. Oh, Jesus. All right. But yeah, so that is our review. So to get in our pluggables here, you can follow me at Carlos Chantor on twitter.com. And as well, please follow and subscribe and like us on both our YouTube and our Spotify channel, where we are uploading every episode simultaneously. And once again, as always, please donate to the Lucifer and the Father campaign. Our good friends Scott, Sean, and Robert are, of course, making a fantastic little series. They've got episode 1 released, but they need some funds to come out with episode 2 and beyond. So please donate. And if you donate, or if you get the idea to donate from our podcast, we will match your contribution up to a reasonable point, probably like $20-$30 for each of us.
Please.
So please donate. It is a fantastic project that we really want to see get done.
Yeah, great guys, great friends of the pod, and great filmmakers. And they're making a cool project. We want to help them out. Just want to reiterate what Taylor said. If you come from Millennials Are Old and you donate through us, let us know, and we will match your donation. Please follow us at Millennials Are Old Pod on Instagram and at Millennials Are Old the podcast on Facebook. Send me your generational cringe, please. If you find anything, if it's millennials, that's best. If you find cringy zoomers, find cringy boomers or Gen Xers, that's all great. But I know there is a wealth of cringy millennials right now. I'm one myself, and I end up accidentally seeing one every day, and I just about claw my eyes out. But yeah, please follow us, especially at Millennials Are Old on Facebook, with all of your awful generational recommendations.
Yes, absolutely. If Miss P is listening to this, please don't reach out, because I don't want to hear what your modern film opinions are. I'm going to be honest with you.
I just the thing is, we said that at first I was thinking this might be an old review, but it couldn't be that old because she references Me Too.
Yeah, it's got to be at least like the
6
very
years?
earliest. Yeah, like 2017, 2016, I think at the earliest, because I think it's when Me Too was like 2015, I want to say.
Really popping off.
Yeah, so that was a fairly recent review. I mean, it feels like fucking 30 years ago, but that is a modern review here. Oh, all right. But yeah, so that is our review. And you know what, Brian? Just like in The Swimmer, Burt Lancaster was old as shit. I'm feeling old as shit. And I feel like, honestly, my dreams haven't come true. So I'm going to go to bed and hopefully dream where my dreams do come true. So I'm going to go to sleep. Have a good night, everybody. I'm going to swim through my fantasy of REM sleep. How does that sound? I'm going to sleep through my REM sleep.
Yeah. It's really hot here in Portland. I'm going to dive into a public pool and hopefully fall asleep.
Hell yeah. And hopefully, just like unlike Habbo Hotel, hopefully the pool is not closed. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.